July 31st, 2023. This is the S&P 500 eFutures Mini on the NinjaTrader 8 platform. Look down at the descriptions below and you can see where I took my trades. Everything is timestamped. Also, there was no real piece of economic news that came out today that really moved the markets. Price action itself was rather slow today. This is the very last day of July, so I made a mistake. I thought last week's Friday was the last trading day, but I was mistaken. Today is actually the officially last trading day of July. So price action was a little slow. There weren't too many setups that I could find, and I did take two trades for two green trades, but they weren't the optimal setups that I usually like, and I felt they might have been a little risky. And I'll go through both of them shortly. So this is what the entire market looked like today. It only moved in about a 20-point trading range. So it's 20 points sounds like it's a lot if you're going from one side to the other. However, the trading range itself was very noisy, very choppy. It was hard to find consistent tops and consistent bottoms because they didn't quite respect or bounce off the same bottom or tops too often. So it made price action and trading kind of hard because on top of that, there just wasn't that many setups, and it took a really long time for various candles to close and move on to the next candle. So we're just going to go ahead and zoom in now. The pre-market, you could already tell there wasn't that much price action. There was a trend that sold off, made a bounce, and came back down. I saw this channel, but this is really early in the pre-market that I don't even trade this. The first setup I actually saw was right here. On the open, I'm thinking prices are probably going to stay within this trading range. It would be a range day. You're going to find out later it technically was a range day, but it was a very noisy, very ugly range. So the first setup I saw was actually right here. I saw this as a new high. Technically, you have a first entry long here, but I just counted this as one big leg. So I saw this one leg down, move up, and then a second leg. So I saw this as first entry long, second entry long. And I saw a potential triple test. The triple test itself, though, wasn't very clean because you could say this is one touch, two touch, three touch, four, or you could count this as one touch, a second touch, and a third touch. Nevertheless, it was kind of like showing some kind of support right here, but I didn't really like it. It wasn't super clean because there was an overshoot right here. And although this second entry long is a good signal bar, because you go from here, first entry long, second entry long, signal bar is good, but even though EMA is flattening out, if I was going to take a second entry long, I kind of wanted the second entry long to at least be closer or above the EMA. Now, I know the EMA doesn't matter as much in range, but when I don't have enough information or enough evidence to tell me it's a good trade, I look for any extra additional, I guess, pegs to shift the scale in favor in my direction to say that you should go long, but it just wasn't there. So I had to skip this one and leave it alone. And I just said, I should just wait for confirmation setup. You get a confirmation high or low here, except it looks like it just broke out of this range, so it could be a failed breakout. So I didn't want to try taking a long here, just is a little bit risky. And then I do see a new short here, or a second entry short here, because this is a new low. First entry short, first time broke down, then made a second entry short right here. Now this is technically when the second entry short is made, when this bar triggers this, but this isn't a very good signal bar, and it is the first break of this shortened trend channel going up. So it broke out, it already tested the highs, so I'm thinking it might make another test up, which it did. It came up and pushed up right here the second time. So definitely when you see this as second entry short, it feels a little premature to try to take a short, even though it's potentially a failed breakout of this larger trading range formed by the pre-market. But again, it's a little confusing, so I just decided to leave it alone. Then it makes a new high here, first entry long. Actually, it doesn't make a first entry long technically per the count till right here. First entry long, it comes up and it comes back down. Technically, this is a lower high of the second entry short. But the second entry short, depending on how you looked at it, it doesn't really seem to be in play anymore. You could be taking a short because price action is coming down, but what's giving me pause is to take a short, even though the EMA is flattening here, it is starting to trend and turn up. So it could be in play here. And when it did look like it bounced here on this candle, it's telling me that, hey, I'm getting squeezed between the potential high of the trading range as well as between the EMA. So there's two conflicting narratives going on here. So I do see a lower high and a failed breakout. I'm not that eager yet to say it's time to go short because it could still come back, bounce, and make another leg up. So this is a little confusing. I marked it though, just so it's a good learning experience for myself because I'll probably see more of these and I'll know what to do, which in this case was just to sit on hands. There wasn't enough evidence arguing to go long or short. So I left it alone. Prices continue shooting down. Looks like I'm wondering at this point when it shot down here, is it going to touch this other side? It doesn't. Kind of comes back up here. I do see a second entry long here. So new high, first entry long, second entry long. This is a very good signal bar, and this would have been a good setup. However, it looks like as it pushes up every time, it's stalling. So if I were to take an entry here, and this is what you would see in real time, I would be concerned if there was enough momentum to help me scalp out the top. You do have a second entry long, and you do have it bouncing off the EMA. And the EMA is starting to turn up, but it feels a little bit choppy. It feels risky. So I thought, well, there's not enough room. I'm going to skip this and maybe wait for a lower high, higher low. But you don't really get a higher low till about right here. And this is just, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't look quite right. Technically, it is a higher low, and it could flash up and touch the top, but I just didn't like that. And as you can see, this one came down. If you had an entry here, you wouldn't have gotten filled. When it flashes down below the EMA, I'd be very reluctant now to attempt to look for a higher low to try to take a long here because it looks a little noisy now, indecisive. Then prices continue coming down. So technically your higher low would have been made right here, but the higher low is below your setup. So it's not really even a higher low anymore. When prices continue chopping, looks like it falls into this range. I see a failed second entry short. So technically here's your new low, but I restarted the count here. I said this is a first entry low, first entry short, pulls back, makes a second entry short, and I'm watching because it's bouncing off the EMA. Even though EMA is flattening out, I see it flash up, and I said, okay, definitely the second entry short has failed. It's hitting the top of this trading range. Prices are biased upwards because it's making higher lows every time now. So there's a potential it could break out and test the top. However, this failed second entry short, I feel nervous about it just because it's touching the top of this trading range now. So I definitely don't want to go long here. It just feels very risky. There's not enough room to squeeze out a scalp. Now, what happens here is where I also take my first trade is on this candle, it flashes down, it traps everybody thinking it's like a first entry short, second entry short, failed second entry short, but people might think, well, it's the top of the range. Top of the range probably is going to have price actually come all the way back down to this side, which is reasonable. So if you had one tick below, right below this big green candle, you would have entered here and likely have gotten trapped. So it flashes up, and I said, well, it flashed up, it closed very, very bullish. And I decided I was going to take this trade because the way I looked at it is it looks like EMA is kind of holding. It broke out of this. It wants to try to test this recent high. It made one attempt here, one big move here, pulls back, and now it's on the process of trying a second time. So I will admit this isn't a very clean or clear setup, but I thought what I saw was a potential entry. So I actually entered right here, one tick above. It's very risky because you are technically at the highs, and if you treat it as a breakout, most breakouts fail. But I also noticed that they're making higher lows every time, so I felt confident that it's probably going to at least flash up to here. I entered, I kept my loss, my stop loss down here, flashes up, I get my scalp. Notice that makes one tick high, one tick higher above here, so it stops out a bunch of people that decide to go short, or it pulls in a bunch of people who decide to go long one tick above, and then it flashes down. So depending on where your exit was, you probably would have gotten trapped here if you went long, and it would have stopped you out here. But I was fortunate with this trade. I was on purpose looking for just the scalp and to ensure that my scalp would be made before I tested this high. So it looked like I only had about two more ticks of room, so I'm okay with that. Prices continue moving down, breaks out of this channel, breaks out of this range, flashes down. Chopping, it's getting very noisy. I don't see anything that looks too appealing that I like. And it continues to trade. I do see this as a new low, first entry short, second entry short failure. Now the second entry short, again, the EMA is starting to flatten again. So the second entry short, depending on what you're looking at, you could have said it's in a range. It is kind of an ugly range, but it technically could be in a range from here to here. I just draw it from here to here for now. And it's kind of in the middle of the range. So to decide to go long or short, it feels like it's a little bit of a dice roll. This is what you see in real time. Then you see this happen. So this trigger bar definitely tells you, okay, the second entry short has failed, but it's too late to try to take an entry way up here. It's too risky. And think that, okay, maybe it's going to come back down. There's no real justification to tell you it's going to come back down to the bottom of this range, except for the fact that it's at the top of the range. But there's too many conflicting ideas. It's a little noisy. I just didn't feel good either way, so I left it alone. Prices top breaks through, creates a failed breakout, and comes all the way back down. Now it's chopping to the bottom here, and it's testing this bottom here. So I'm not really sure. I'm just sitting on my hands. It's getting confusing. Breaks out, comes back in, has a strong push up off of no news that I could find. It gets noisy again. It's just getting really, really ugly price action. It's hard for me to tell which direction it's going to go, so I just try my best to sit on my hands. And this is actually where I take my second trade. The second trade, I will admit, is a little risky, just like the first one. I saw this as a new high. First entry long, pulls back. Technically, you have your second entry long here, and you could say there's a third entry long here. But I just count this as one leg down, pulls up, then a second leg down. Now pulls up. You haven't made a higher low yet, but here you do. So this is actually first entry long, second entry long, and then this is a higher low off a very strong bullish bar, pretty much closed and opened right at the top, as well as coincides with the high. Now, the reason I took this trade, I thought this is a potential fail breakout. Yes, this trading range is getting kind of noisy. It's hard to really say the bias is going down or up, but it is look like it's in a trading range of this big gray one. So I'll admit that this trade was a little riskier. So when I saw this, I entered one tick above on the next candle. It flashes up, and I'm only going for about five, I think 5 ticks. It comes up, it just hits my exit, but it doesn't fill me. So now it flashes down, and my stop loss is down here on this double bottom, because I saw this as a potential double bottom, maybe a triple test, but more just this double bottom, which is what I was playing off of. It breaks out, and now I'm a little nervous, so I just wait. I see this is a new low, first entry short, second entry short, and the second entry short fails. So what this actually does for me is it gives me confidence to just hang in the trade for now because it's a failed second entry short. It could go long, or it could have buyers come in, and the long trade might still work. But of course, I'll admit I was a little bit questioning whether I should just scratch the trade or get out early for a smaller loss instead of taking the loss way down here. Maybe take the loss down here where this double bottom is. But I'm waiting. I try to not touch or Mickey Mouse with the trade after I've already entered it. Then it goes down. I saw a new high, first entry long. Technically, it makes a second entry long. And when I saw this gigantic bullish bar flash all the way up, again, it gives me confidence that taking a long is okay. When I took it back here, definitely back here where there wasn't as much information, it feels more dicey. But I get confidence on this failed second entry short. Then seeing the second entry long, it gives me, again, confidence that, hey, this trade might work out. And remember, my exit's actually right here. So this candle actually doesn't fill me either. It has to tick through. This next candle does tick through, so I get filled. It was a nervous wait. I was questioning whether this was a good trade or not. In hindsight, I will admit it was more of a riskier trade for sure, but I had been waiting the entire day. And not to say that I shouldn't have just kept waiting, but I think it was getting to me that I waited the entire day with only one trade here. So when I jumped in, I think this may have been premature, but to enter on a failed second entry short here might have been a better option. And then definitely if you try to enter on the second entry long, it feels like the trade is too late now because when you see this happen, your entry, if you want to try to take it down here, you wouldn't have gotten filled. It would just went without you. And to take it one tick above here feels very risky because it looks like this gigantic move up would have already gotten the scalp that you're originally gunning for. So to take it one tick above, now you're asking it to pretty much double your original profit target, which can or cannot happen, but now you're just asking a lot from the market. It'd been better if you had entered down here and you had a runner. So fortunately, I did enter on the higher low here. Again, it was riskier, but it worked out. Prices continue chopping, and this is where it kind of chops into the end of the day, and there's not much good setups that I like. You do technically have a new low here, first entry short, second entry short, third entry short, but to try to argue if there was a trade here, I kept looking at it in hindsight and I just didn't see it. The prices continue chopping, and then this is the last 10 minutes. Of course, the last 10 minutes of every day usually gets pretty noisy. And as you can see, it just flashes up. You don't know that this would have happened, and to take any kind of entry here feels very risky. So overall, it was a pretty noisy, kind of a slow trading day. I was kind of amazed in a way that I got two green trades out of it because they felt a little bit riskier for sure. So hopefully that was helpful.